me give feedback. So I'm just waiting for my team to load the presentation or the template. Thank you, Shirley. It's always by my side. Okay, so before we start, can I say this, that it's not always easy, although we yesterday had such a detailed presentation on the model, it does take time to process the information. It's not always easy to take a model within 1 hour and then apply it practically. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I had the opportunity, but it did take some time to explain some of the conceptual ideas of the model to my commission. I have to say this and be open and transparent about it. There is some concerns and maybe conflicting ideas with regard to establishing a fully fledged inclusive education system. The model that we are proposing from the Eastern Cape, there are points that we have to talk to our national department to bring us so that we can see eye to eye. The position that we have, do I have only 10 minutes? Okay. So let me start. So, thank you. Thank you. So you're also enjoying the moment. So let me start with the activity plan. So we already have the status quo for the activity for next year. With the support of our Chief Director and our DDG and all the top management officials, we have managed to put the first year's okay, thank you.
Forward screen. I think that is better.
Yes. Thank you, DDG. Okay, so the concerns, let me just recap and go back to the concerns because I think they're important when we move forward. We want to be close to our national department as close as possible when we move forward. We don't want to move in a direction that they don't feel comfortable with. So when we spoke to our disability sector, the consensus from the Eastern Cape is that although we support a fully fledged inclusive education system, we do believe that there is place for separate units within mainstream schools for learners with specific types of disabilities. That's a strong belief we have. If I can give you an example, a child that is severely intellectually impaired and has a comorbid diagnosis of autism spectrum, which is a lot of our kids in our Elspeth centers, will find it very difficult to cope in a mainstream class where there's 45 learners. They have sensory issues, where there's noise, or, each child is so individual. Anything can trigger that child. The child sense of belonging in a mainstream class. Some children are clever enough to understand that I am not doing what the other children are doing, and they become self-aware, and it creates behavioral problems for those children. So there are, what we believe is that the child must come first. We're not going to force a child into a system. We want to make sure that the system is flexible enough to respond to the needs of children. So our model makes it very clear. If there's a child with severe intellectual disability and can cope in grade R or grade 1 with other kids, then we'll place that child in that classroom. But if we come to a point and see that this child is not coping in this big class of 40 children, his sensory issues are just too overwhelming for him, he's keep on acting out, he has a sense of self-awareness that I keep on falling behind, he's not progressing, or for whatever reason might be, we have proposed that for those children, we do create units for them. And the rationale for the units is it's a favorable teacher-learner ratio. It means that we have planned for not more than 10 to 15 learners in a unit where there's one teacher that can give attention to those children. We are not saying the children are excluded from the play activities, from sport activities. There will be many instances where we will promote inclusive education for those children. But we do have a strong belief that those children's needs are of such a nature that it's not always possible. We also from the position that it's not according to what we find in our mainstream schools that you'll only find 2 children at maximum with disabilities. The research is not supporting that. We find that you have various numbers of learners in a particular school with disabilities. So the idea of flocking learners together with disabilities into one-stream schools, taking them away from the mainstream schools, we don't think that holds water. So we will look at all those contextual factors with the needs of the child and then do the proposal. The other concern was, but apparently when I spoke to some of the colleagues at National, that's part of the interim committee that's critically evaluating the White Paper 6, there's no concerns to have units for TOC in mainstream schools, but yet that is also a unit. So there is some contradiction information that we are receiving. What we are trying to do, we are trying to respond in the best way we can to the kids. So we are suggesting, Mr. Noble, with all due respect, an open dialogue with your office on these matters so that we can get clarity and just find a way forward. We don't want to be the only province that doesn't understand the needs of our children. We want to know that we do understand what our children need. So we believe that our model is inclusive, our disability sector is supporting it, and they're 100% in agreement with us. So for now, the status quo will remain, and we will move forward with how we are planning. So what we have 80 units for the first year, which you won't see here, but we'll add it because our time was very limited. 80 units for learners with severe intellectual disability, with 15 learners per unit. It gives you approximately 1,200 learners that used to go to special schools that will now from next year be placed in mainstream schools. And these kids, with the support of our top management, will have 1 personnel for 15 learners. They will have 1 teacher system that has been approved and budgeted for. We've already provided more than 2 million rand on LTSM, and the training for those schools will happen. Before all those things are not in place, we will not place a single child in those units, and that will happen. We will start with the advertising this year, DDG, and hopefully those posts will be out. We're doing the profiling now. We'll communicate with HR to help us. But everything else is relatively in order to start with those programs. Now, for the second year, what the feedback is, what we got, is that we will expand that program with 100 additional units for the next coming year. So it means that we will 100 times 15, you can do the calculation. That will give you indication of how many learners with severe intellectual disabilities with or without a comorbid diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. So that was the planning for proposal from our team, that we will expand it. We will indicate what the PPN requirements are. We'll put it on the plan, and we will reflect on that. What we said is that our districts we gave them the distribution of the current posts with their special schools, what their needs are, and they have made inputs on how many units they require, but we are going to communicate further with them so that we can make sure the distribution is fair. We want to focus on our rural areas, our children out there that are not being provided with support. So that is the SID, ASD units will be expanded by 100 for the second year, and then the third year also 100. First year, as I said, everything is in place. All resources have been looked after, as well as we've made some adjustments to our norms and standards to look after those kids. Then we spoke about therapeutic support. Now, therapeutic support, we are moving in the right direction. For this year, we have allocated 20 additional therapist posts, 10 for special schools, 10 for the districts, and we're moving in the right direction, and we are asking for 20 additional posts for next year, again 10. We have indicated in our action plan that our Elspeth centers, our 30 therapists there, will follow the integration of learners from the Elspeth centers. We have about 500 learners that must be integrated by the end of March, and we are working close with our Elspeth centers. Our relationship with our Elspeth centers, Mr. Ngobo, is special, and we want to honor them, we want to respect them, and we do believe in an integration process, but we do believe in a due process. Our centers we're working very closely with them, and we do believe that they need to be integrated, but we're going to take it step by step. We don't want to harm our kids in the process. So we are steadily moving forward with regard to the integration, and the therapeutic support is available. We have the MEC outreach, that's part of the action plan, where on an annual basis we go to districts that have limited number of therapists, and we do additional assessments. And then we've also have 4.2 million from COE from the Elspeth, which I'm taking 1.6 million to provide for outreach services to make sure that all our children are assessed as well. Then with the next unit, or the next type of support, is the level 3, which is the deaf and blind learners. Now, our disability sector is very excited about this. They are supporting us 100%. On this one, we believe in a fully inclusive environment. We're going to identify DDG next year 2 schools, primary schools. We're going to start slow. We are going to integrate deaf learners into a school, and we're going to put them in the class with all the other children. We have planned in our model 5 to 20, so we're going to ask for a reduction of the number of learners in those units, but we'll have 5 deaf learners in the class with 20 learners that are not deaf. For those units, we are planning, it's in the planning phase for next year. Next year we'll do the planning, but hopefully our ring-fence posts from special schools will allow us to open those units. Then we'll be the first province, I believe, that will manage that, and I believe with the support of our top management we can do that. So we're going to identify 2 schools. We are giving that authority to our districts, and we'll ask them to help us to identify it. Then to learning support units, those are the units. We have, I think, 18 or 19 units. I can feel the presence of the Chief Director here next to me, which means I need to finish up now. Learning support units, I think we've got about, where is Jerome now? I think 24, 18 this year. 24. We have 24 learning support units that are smaller classes. We have the personnel, DDG. It has been approved. The PPN was allocated to those schools. We have bought them LTSM. Those will be smaller units where learners that are struggling with the curriculum will go for on a temporary basis to get additional support. Then lastly, TOC. So we have planned for 12 TOC units for next year. That's linked to our vocational schools or occupational schools. We have 12 units for our occupational schools. And what we are saying is that let's link the TOC, and this was also the support of Chief Director Mrs. Bula. Let's link it with the vocational schools, because they already have the personnel, they already have the units, and we have 84 plus of those schools in the province. We have identified about, out of the 12, I think about 7 vocational schools where we're going to place, as from next year, 40 learners per school. So we're expanding. About 600 learners will now be exposed to the TOC, where our 3 schools that we have is running at full capacity. So we have the PPN for those schools. We bought them about 10 million rand of LTSM equipment, and we are providing that to those schools. And we will then, for the following year, identify 15 new schools, and the following year 15 new schools. And so slowly but steadily we will expand on the TOC for those children. And this is a very important project for us because it really opens the door for a lot of progress learners that are just not passing and falling out of the system. We will be able to hold on to those kids with all of these programs. And then the last one is our special schools. We are saying that in our deaf, blind, and physically disabled schools, we have children that are intellectually impaired, but yet we only present the academic curriculum to those kids. So it's not possible for those kids to pass. That's why you have such a low pass rate at some of our schools, because it doesn't mean if you're deaf and blind that you don't necessarily have an intellectual disability. So the submission will be en route. We will take it from the ring fence post. We will introduce the SIT curriculum as a matter of urgency in those schools. And we will also introduce the TOC curriculum in that school. And then lastly, our Gali Tembani and Ruben Burren School, we're going to introduce DDG, a SID program at Gali Tembani. Remember, it's TOC, but we're going to introduce the SID, the DCAPs. Because sometimes when you look at these kids, you won't know. Even the assessment can't tell you, is the child severe, or is he moderate? The test just doesn't tell you that detail. So it's more about adaptive functioning. So those programs run very nicely together. And we do have a concern that all of these programs are going to be aimed at primary school. So where do we take our children that are older, that are severely intellectually impaired? Where do we go with these kids? And this is exactly where we're going to go with them. We are looking at expanding that program at Gali Tembani, and we're also considering expanding that program at our 3 TOC schools that we have. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to come up with a position where we are creative to respond to the needs of our children, and we will move forward, and we believe that people will move forward with us on these issues. Thank you very much.
Masoka. Mr. Plata, Mr. Pata, is this yours? The laptop. You even left the laptop here. Were you that nervous?
No, I wasn't nervous. It is my
Thank you so much, Mr. Pata, for that presentation. Can we give him a round of applause, please? I'm going to make my remarks after the third presentation. Can I request Commission 2 to Is Commission 3 ready? Oh, let's usher Commission 2 to the podium. Thank you, Mrs.
Afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm just presenting back info that we had in Commissions 4 and 5. Commission 4 was assistive technology and devices, and Commission 5 was the data management system. We only got to the point where we were really discussing issues, and we didn't populate our template. We never got to that. So I just want to present like a running discussion of some of the key issues. I'm not going to show you anything, because I'm just going to read it from my minutes. So in Commission 1, we had 2 questions. We needed to revise an assistive technology funding and provisioning policy to ensure that the majority of devices and resources for mainstream learners reaches those learners. So Mrs. Kota from e-learning started with a presentation to explain what we're currently doing. There's an inequitable funding model within Program 4, where 95% of the budget from norms and standards for LTSM assistive devices goes to special schools. And we had some discussions about proposing how we can achieve a more equitable system. So Mr. Sekobela explained to the participants that in the end, there's only about R1 million left for assistive devices per annum for all mainstream learners, which isn't nearly enough. Mrs. Korto also explained some of the packages that they are providing, and 6 special schools were resourced from a recent rollout of a package from Stats SA and CETA. And I'm very pleased to see that visualizers are included in that, because a lot of our work is no longer through a data projector, but a visualizer straight from where the teacher is working on a surface and it's being projected on a screen, particularly where there are skills involved. So an art class where you're teaching stippling, but more so with learners who need, who have special needs. We had more discussions about centralizing that budget. There was a question raised by the disability sector whether we have the information, whether special schools are in fact utilizing the LTSM assistive devices budget. And there was a call from several members to ask for more research and for inter-collaboration. So with the disability sector and also with the institutes of higher learning. Mrs. Bula supported the idea of not working in the silos across our directorates. So we need to come closer as inclusive education to e-learning and to IT school resourcing. We didn't mention that, but I've just thought about that. We had several contributions, and Mr. Samili made the contribution that what we're trying to achieve is really cake in the sky. He gave the example of how a pen might cost a couple of rand, but a Perkins writer costs 15,000 rand. So disability is expensive. One of the other things that the contribution I made was, for instance, if we look at a pyramid, only 5% of learners actually need individual assistive devices that are prescribed for them. Things like communication devices and highly specialized devices it's issued to the child. And 60% of learners can benefit from the e-learning provision, so laptops, Chromebooks, visualizers, and maybe assistive software. And then there's a smaller group who really just need universal design for teaching. And that was identified as an area that we really do need to capacitate teachers. So on Microsoft 365, for instance, using the accessibility features of creating contrast, increasing the font, using immersive reader that's already built into the software. I hope I've captured all the points under that section. We didn't get to a point where we populated the template and gave timelines. Then to discuss the next commission, Education Data Management, Dr. Mbeje gave a good presentation outlining where are we able to find learners with barriers to learning, or ELSON learners, wherever they are. And there's a new system that's going to be put into place from the next fiscal quarter that looks at mainstream, offering NSC curriculum, ELSON in mainstream, ELSON in a unit, ELSON in a special school. And the resourcing needs to be developed into a differentiated resourcing module that should provide for the learner wherever they are. So we brought up this idea of the money following the child. It also raised the issues from several people, mainly Mr. Els, who is saying the verification of a learner's disability needs to be done by the district-based support team, because at the moment, a clerk or someone in the school is loading the disability. So I gave the example like learners who need spectacles are loaded as partially sighted. That's inaccurate. And then if funding is going to follow the learner, we really need to get rid of that inaccurate or resolve the issues about inaccurate data on the SA system, SAM systems. Mr. Els also presented the numerous data collection tools that we've developed in inclusive education through Microsoft Forms. And there was a discussion that really we shouldn't be using multi-data collection, and there's no connection between the two systems, and that we need to build dashboards that really speak to combining the data. And SA SAMS it was proposed that SA SAMS starts to integrate the Microsoft systems to avoid this duplication, or SA SAMS is more sensitive to capturing the data that's important for the provisioning of inclusive education. There was some debate, a discussion about how schools load the learner profile and other information when a learner's been identified through the CS process. But the SASAM system is not a live system. It's behind. So the information is not current day to day. EMIS offered to assist inclusive education with providing that data when you do warehousing, I think it was called, at the end of every term. There was, sorry, I missed a key point, and that's the need for an ELSIN number on the SAM system, which will help us with the provisioning model. So that was also discussed at in quite a lot of length, how we'd actually do that. I think that's captured anything, unless Mrs. Bula or Mrs. Koto would like to add anything. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Another round of applause, please. Can I ask that Commission 3, if there are no inputs from Commission 2? Okay, Commission 3, can you come? Thank you, Mr. Ngob. Thank you, thank you. Nokhala, Jian, Msuthu, Kubevu.
Hayi man. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks, Mr. Program Director. I am going to be quick with our presentation. Good afternoon, DDJ. Sat Ukora and the IT guys are trying to flight it there in the screen. Are you winning? Sure. Oh, okay. Our commission was Commission 6, dealing mainly with child abuse, with more focus on the standard operating procedures with regard to that, facilitated by Mr. Mnguni, with a resource person, with Dr. Ukora van Foren, myself, Ndungu Ngobo from Ekrisani East. What do we want to achieve with this commission in this Indaba? Wanted to provide a clear framework to identify, or perhaps for identifying and reporting child abuse. We might all agree that we are faced with various challenges regarding child abuse in our sector these days. We felt it proper that we should provide identification and how best can we report child abuse situations or happenings in our sector. To ensure legal compliance, with more focus on the Children's Act, Sexual Offences Act, Domestic Violence Act, as part of our legislative frameworks and other related legislations. Protect learner rights and ensure safety. Strengthen implementation of the guidelines and the protocol on child abuse and sexual misconduct reporting in schools. We want to clarify roles and accountability of all functionaries, perhaps even to describe who are the functionaries responsible for reporting of such abuses. School principals, all other functionaries, school-based support teams, DPSTs, psychologists, social workers, and everybody related to whom these incidents could be reported, to ensure uniform understanding and mandatory reporting duty, as in terms of Section 110 of the Children's Act and the related laws. The expected outcomes from this commission: one, a clear standardized reporting procedure for all schools and all districts. Please underline a clear standardized reporting procedure for all of us to use the same procedure. Improve alignment in inclusive education, labor, legal services, and other related stakeholders in responding to cases in time and efficiently. To get a commitment from the district directors within the department to ensure functionality of the psychosocial support system in a proper manner as documented in the protocol, and hence interdepartmental collaboration. We, in this commission, wanted to enhance and strengthen that this war against children's abuse could not be, we cannot win it solely as us, as the Department of Education, but we need a strong collaboration with the Department of Social Development, South African Police Services, NPA for case management, and the related structures. Recommendations for accountability and follow-up actions to ensure compliance with legal obligations. Nazike, these are the points of discussion as per this commission: the legal and policy alignment. Relating to Section 54 of the Sexual Offences Act, Section 110 of the Children's Act, and other related, including the Domestic Violence Act. Districts and schools to ensure that districts and schools are implementing the Department of Education National Protocol and the child abuse guidelines consistently. And also in our point of discussions, how can the department ensure that all staff understand mandatory reporting and the correct use of reporting mandatory forms? What monitoring and feedback system exists to track compliance and case closure? How can the department ensure that all our DPSTs, including our therapists, specialists, and psychologists and social workers, provide stabilization without interfering with the investigation as per the procedure? We also dealing with the capacity development and support. How effective can we provide capacity development to all the functionaries that are associated with this? What additional capacity building or refresher training are required? How our DPSTs improve with support to schools with hostels and other high-risky environments and other related institutions? What strategies can ensure community and our SDP's involvement in preventing and reporting this abuse and other functionaries? Then how the inclusive education, curriculum, labor, the legal work together to strengthen the accountability within the turnaround specified times. 2, systems strengthening and data management. Working more on how can the Department of Education digital reporting tool be fully implemented across all the district, measures needed to ensure confidentiality and data protection, how districts track patterns and repeated incidents to inform prevention strategies. What partnerships can we use and enhance with the Department of Social Development, SAPS, the NGOs, the justice sector, and the related that are essential for the case follow-up and learner support? Lastly, how can we ensure the best interests of the child remain central to all actions and decisions? Nazike, these are the key insights from our discussions in my left 2 minutes. 1, we feel that there is a need for ongoing trainings on mandatory reporting, particularly for new and acting principals and everybody involved within the provision of e-education. Interdepartmental collaboration between departments should be strengthened for swift response to learner protection. Digital reporting tools, e-functionaries, all of them, including the psychologists, the social workers, should adhere strictly to ethical limits, no therapeutic intervention with the victims prior forensic processes, advocacy and community partnerships, putting the best interests of the child first. Legal framework and obligation to report to ensure that learners are protected by law. All functionaries should report incidents with immediate effect using Form 22, which should be made available to all institutions, to all educators. The necessary form to report the incidents should be used is only Form 22. And whoever that the case has been reported to should report it with immediate effect. To the capacity development and support, we need to design a departmental capacity building program, interdepartmental relations, to enhance vetting of officials through getting the register, National Register of Sex Offenders and the Child Protection Register with Department of Social Development. The SAYS Code of Conduct, we need to get the data available there for the vetting of the student teachers from SAYS. In conclusion, Chair, strengthening our recruitment processes to strengthen e-vetting and to continue with the advocacy. We have also designed, Chair, if time was permitting us, we have designed some kind of an action plan as much as we needed to refine. The action plan has these focus areas: training and capacity development, the policy implementation, interdepartmental collaboration, accountability and monitoring, digital data management, advocacy and prevention, ethical practices, child-centered approach. Lastly, one chair to say, as the department, we should have a multidisciplinary team made by various sections and units within the department that comes together and begin a program that is going to do advocacy against child abuse. I-cost yale plan, ilungiswe kakuhle, icelelwe imali phaka ko-DDG ubheka phaka ku-CFO, so that with immediate effect, xa kuqala unyaka, we are able to take it to the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ngobo. Mr. Joseph, I hope you looked on this side. The shirt that he's wearing is light blue. So I still maintain the color of today. Thank you, Mr. Ngobo. Any contributions from or additions from Commission 3, formerly known as Commission 6? Going once? It's gone. Thank you so much for the presentation. Can you give yourselves a round of applause, please? Thank you so much, colleagues, for the presentations. This was not done properly because of time, but I have this recommendation that I want to throw into the meeting, that I know that some commissions did not complete their work. Therefore, I would request that DDG through you, that we give them up till Friday, that all the contributions that are to be submitted, they are submitted virtually, whether, Mr. Pata, you engage on a virtual platform but all the contributions that must be submitted, so that a report on Friday, a comprehensive report on Friday, can be actually, compiled in terms of this particular, task. And I would like to thank all the presenters that came to sort of present the reports from their commissions and all the work that has been done. It is unfortunate that indeed we are pressured with time. In that regard, then, I am going to ask my DDG, uSkhomo, uHudulu, uMhlatyana, uChangisa, kuthiwa ke bombiza ke umuntu ngezinto zakowabo ukwenzela baze selethambile ejola ngapha ngaphambili. Can I ask you, DDG, to come forward and make a word on commitments by the department? Thank you so much. Masim Kwabel.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Eh? Oh, sorry. Colleagues, when you attend a summit or when you attend a conference, you come to a conference with a set of concerns that you want to share with your stakeholders, with an intention of getting solutions to your thinking, solutions to your conceptualization, and solutions to your frameworks that you had. And operating within those frameworks, you told yourself that in my little corner, I've thought about this, and in my little corner, I've tried to pull all this information together, but it still does not make sense. So let me therefore invite everybody. So as we come along, day one, we put on the floor what our expectations of this session are. The reason we do that, we don't want to call you for the sake of calling you. We are calling you so that we can make a contribution to take the system from one level to another level. So all of the things that need to, or that require to be worked out and teased out, they are thrown into commissions. And in the commissions, this is where we dedicate the whole day on commissions. And if you note with you, it was just 2 hours, you know. And colleagues, I don't want to lie, my assumption was that it's going to be a whole day and then we are reporting back tomorrow. Now, when I come here, only to hear that, I go to the harbor, go to what did it? No. It doesn't work like that. So let's first support the idea that we can ask the commission chairs to interact with commission members who are going to circulate the registers so that in each commission we can share email addresses that people who want to make input, they can make inputs, so that by Friday we can sit with chairpersons of commissions on consolidated recommendations that we can send back to you as the report of this session. But colleagues, what is very important is to note the parameters of our discussion. We are operating a system of education in a context of international practices. So what we do is not something that is in the corner of Eastern Cape, but it's an internationally practiced education phenomena, and particularly inclusion and inclusive education. As a result, in different countries, you'll find different forms. So as we go along, we also benchmark and learn against best practices. So what we're trying to do today is to chart a way forward for the funding and supporting of an inclusive education model for the Eastern Cape. And that's what Mr. Pata presented to all of you, that is it possible to come out with an inclusive model of inclusive education? We are mindful of the fact that some areas will be regulated by DBE because policy is not our prerogative. Policy is DBE prerogative. Where there are gaps in policy, as this collective were able to say to DBE, DBE can open up 1, 2, 3 policy spaces because there's a gap and we really want to move forward. If you can just provide us with a policy framework or a regulation to allow us to function properly. You know, something very strange, I was listening to a conversation about, you remember this thing about Deputy President Didi Mabuza's pension and children and all of that, the court case and all of that. Something that came out from one of the kids, and I thought it's one of the sharpest legal analysis I've ever heard. She says, you know, the problem with South Africa is that we throw up a lot of laws without regulations. And she goes further to say, you can even look at the Bella Act, that we are so proudly announcing, it's unregulated. And sometimes it's very difficult to implement a law without a firm set of regulations on how you are going to make it live. Now, if you look at our policies and legal frameworks, you know, we don't have lots of regulations. And I'll tell you, this is the domain that is left at our disposals to develop regulations on implementation of. I mean, DBE can say to you, look, this is the inclusion framework. And what the team has tried to do is to find a way of regulating that framework so that it becomes a program of implementation of government. Now, more often than not, we want to operate as if Tina, our head office, we are policy managers. We are not. We are policy implementers. And as policy implementers, we are the ones who are supposed to come back and say, it doesn't make sense on the ground. Therefore, let's regulate it differently. Now, coming out of this discussion, the first one, colleagues, that's very important, is the model itself. And I should think, let's support the idea that says, you can't throw all eggs into one basket and say inclusive education or inclusion. You would need separateness. And I should think there is truth to the fact that we need to find one another between ourselves and DBE on the concept of inclusion and inclusive education, and on the need to discuss where parameters of difference are between us and DBE. I'm also managing the space of curriculum, as you all know, and mother tongue-based education has come up as one of those. As we continue discussing an approach to reading, we're also introducing mother tongue-based education. And the key question that comes in is that in that discussion about reading, which is almost a compliance to a national framework, we don't discuss the epistemology of African languages in the science of teaching of reading, using the metaphor of the African culture and African base. And that requires a meticulous approach locally to look at what is our context. The same thing applies in here. We need to start looking at what forms of inclusion that are emerging in the Eastern Cape, and what forms of disabilities that are predominant in the Eastern Cape, and therefore what model is going to fit us in the Eastern Cape. We take into account, Lawrence, that historically we have two sides of the province that have been provided in a very vastly different way. You have the other side of the Kai and the BCM Nelson Mandela Metro concentration, where not only inclusion, but where special schools were highly concentrated. The rest of the province neglected for quite a long period of time. So when people talk about autism as coming, it's not necessarily that autism is coming sharply for the first time, but it's because people have become aware that government is supposed to support this kind of inclusion. Now, in this case, it actually means in the past, we were not paying attention to all of these. Now we're beginning to pay attention to them. So the notion that says, look, differentiate, separate, we therefore need to develop a very strong database, data collection, on how we manage cases that emerge as a province, especially cases that require inclusion, interventions. As I'm saying, colleagues, we don't have a database at ward level, which is the smallest unit of government, wherein our district can tap on data that comes from the hospitals, that comes from home affairs, that comes from social development, just to give you a card profile of this child per household. Even including the cluster discussion, I and AZPA, my fight with them is that when you fight issues of disabilities, poverty, those issues zine address, zine stuko ezuzenzile bezabantu abakezutuko. So it's not cases that are out of the blue, but really it's households. But colleagues, as we're sitting here, we don't have that data. I can ask you now, where is our database on newly identified cases of autism in the Eastern Cape? We don't. And this is the big call for all of us to think about the system afresh. And that's why we've put up a framework to say, our framework of support of all of these cases has these levels, but we agree that we cannot just club them all together into one system. We need to agree that some might need a bit of differentiation. So I should think, let's support that we need to then agree who needs specialized support, so this framework that has been presented by Commission 1, I suspect we need to support it fully. It's going to be a tough time. Imagine when you say blind and deaf children must be integrated in the mainstream. It means, therefore, as government, you know who they are, where they are, and how much do you need to support them. Otherwise, you are going to go back to the tragedy of full service schools that you declare emotionally. I see in full service schools. Then the next thing, we don't meet the obligations of the full service schools. And therefore, they don't do the job that they were established. So nationally, there was a decision that, hey, let's revise, let's review, because we're not plowing the requisite resources to these full service schools. Again, if we were to think about moving the direction of specialized units, we support that, but we need to agree, what are the norms and standards that will apply to our specialized units? What is going to be the PPN provision for that? What is going to be the LTSM provision for that? What is going to be the funding requirement for that? If we then work out each of these and we're able to package it, which is what we expect commissions to support in doing. What will a special unit look like in terms of all the provision that it must cater for? Now, if we say these kids must go to full service schools, what are the implications for the skills combinations of teachers that will be dealing with these classes? Now, if we have to think about a 5-year plan, it's going to give us a leeway to work out over a period of 5 years to say, look, in the next 5 years, we can tackle 10% of the problem. So it's going to be very useful. The second big issue, colleagues, that you spoke about, which I think is very important, is the issue of funding, equity redress. Now, post-94, colleagues, I should think the main obsession with everybody, you can go to the Fiscal Commission and all the recommendations that they made. You can go to National Treasury. I should think the main concern was really about the poor of the poorest and how they can get the lion's share. Because historically, whites got the lion's share compared to black children. In so doing, we then worked out a formula that is even beginning to kill some of the interventions that we're trying. Can take, for example, farm schools. Farm schools will never, in any figment of imagination, give you 1,000 children. It's a farm school. A farm school with 200 kids. Yesterday, I was in a farm school in Port Elizabeth, wherein children as big number as 40 in one class is grade 1 and grade 2, because the PPN does not allow. The PPN funds the number of children in a school. That's why we have rationalization, small schools. Otherwise, it's the phenomenon of the Eastern Cape. And I don't think we want to recognize that. Again, inclusion comes into that space. When you argue for PPN and when you argue for resources, it's going to be important that we are dealing with a different category of learners. So it's not the same category of learners as any other body. So the contextual background to this is going to be very important, such that equity and redress, they work together when we talk about funding of inclusive education. I should think that's one thing that comes out from the second commission on funding. The third commission, colleagues, is the third issue that comes out is the issue on curriculum. Colleagues, I'm fighting, and in my fight, I'm trying to say the 3 streams model says not every child wants to do mathematics and science, but it doesn't say disabled children must do occupational curriculum. It doesn't say that. It says if you are not academically inclined in the sense of your mathematics and English and so on, then you can do a vocational stream. But if you don't want a vocational stream, you can look at pure practical work in an occupational sense, it does not make you disabled. It doesn't make you disabled. Now, the conception that drives our work in the department is to think that occupational curriculum is for Bayesville. It's not, colleagues. It's a curriculum that says, in the township today, you are sitting with millions of youth, not a single skill. If these ones, you can give them just motor mechanic skill. Occupational, you are not asking them to look at, hybrid engines. You're asking them how to fix a carburetor of a car. And given that, it actually means, therefore, that let us desist from thinking that it's only special schools that require occupational curriculum. Children in the mainstream need occupational curriculum. The point of the matter is, how do we manage the diversity of a curriculum within the public schooling system? How then do we translate that into the special needs categories of our schools? Because it's about giving these children technical occupational skills as well as academic skills. Within your inclusive model, you have children who can become medical doctors. The problem is that we have had this medical model of turning them out somewhere into something called special schools. When they're in something called special schools, they are doomed forever. And I should think this is what this workshop was trying to do, is how do you open up all of those, So it's going to be very important, colleagues, that when we think about rebuilding the system, we rebuild the system from point of view of how then do we restructure the delivery of curriculum in such a way that it makes sense to a normal public ordinary school, it makes sense to an ordinary special school, it makes sense to a to an ordinary technical vocational school. So it's something that will need to come out. So these allocations, as recommended by the commissions, that look, we need to introduce seed curriculum here, and it's because we have assessed that these kids will thrive better in this curriculum. So it's going to be important that the commission then makes very specific recommendations, so that when we go back to all stakeholders, we agree that this is our target on seed curriculum, and this is how we're going to fund it, this is how it's going to work as a model. So it's something that we need to plan thoroughly. And last but not least, colleagues, is child abuse. I should think the commission on protocols must be given time to consolidate and come up with a very concrete protocol on how do you deal with identification, management, and the referral of child abuse cases. The legal framework in South Africa is one of the best. The Constitution guarantees. The Children's Act, it gives you very specific, but we need then to develop a regulatory framework that allows us to have a standard operating procedure on how we are going to deal with abuses. Whether in a primary school or a secondary school, as long as these children are underage, the system is not supposed to be laughing with anybody who abuses children. Now, if then the commission, within the context of their proposal, and within the work that they've done, if they can then pull together a standard operating procedure that we can promulgate, then it becomes a circular of the department on management, on identification and management of child abuse cases. So, colleagues, in those few words, we want to endorse what Mr. Zenzele was saying, that these are the areas that we need to look at, and then by Friday, if you can consolidate all the reports into a report that will be sent to all of you for comment, it's going to be useful for all of us. Thank you, colleagues. I want to thank you, all of you.
Ndicela ezinye izandla futhi. Yabona ke xa kugqiba uthetha utata wekhaya, indwadunge ezifana nathi aba aziphinde zibe nanto yakuthetha. Xoleleni ke simkile ngoku isiNgesi, kushiyeke isintu sam kuphela ngoku. Andizowagxobha DDG, akho nenye into ezayithetha. There's nothing I can say after the DDG has spoken. Mine is just to say thank you, DDG, for coming. Thank you, DDG, for what you have shared with us. Indeed, what you have asked of us to do, we will do it. With those words, can I ask Mr. Monwabisi Mbangeni to come and do the vote of thanks? Esiza ke enjalo, ndiza kumcela ke njengamntana wayile Sunday school. Oh, uxolo tata Mbangeni. Uxolo tata Mbangeni kancinci nje. Uxolo tata Mbangeni.
Colleagues, with due respect, that this program was also in partnership with the disability sector. However, the end product shouldn't be us and them. All right? It should be a product that comes from an Indaba with the implementation plan. So I'm just saying we should also take stock that, not me, I don't even see the leadership, maybe that's why they left. Not me, but the disabled people's organizations leaders must, in this process, because we're dealing with an issue that talks to also the Elspeth centers, which is a crisis not only for Eastern Cape but for the country, all right? So as we do these things, we must always acknowledge the input and the responsibility they have taken away from the department, in line with the department's constitutional mandate. I'm just raising that, Chair, so that as we do these things, when we will input, Mr. Jogat, we will input on those commissions as they come, but I'm just saying the department must always have that in mind, that you're not dealing with this thing of education in isolation with the sector, because the sector has taken 20% of your responsibility without it even being compensated to do that. They are doing it for free. Parents have to leave their work, abandon work to go and look after their kids, whilst other kids are at school. I'm just mentioning that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tata. Thank you so much. Mr. Pata, let's take note of that one. As Mr. Mbangeni was coming, I was saying, njengamntana ke ukhulele ecaweni. Uyawuthi ke xa ewenza amazwembezwembe umbulelo, angamlibali unala. Over to you, Dad.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Let me also rise on the protocol that has already been established in order to save time. Mine is very simple. Just to say thank you to everybody who's here. But let me do that by starting Gogubulela, the TTG that has joined us. We have been missing him the whole of yesterday and the morning session today. Enkosi Budrai for coming to this meeting. We also want as the department to appreciate the presence and the inputs that were made by the MEC for the Education Department and also by the head of department, who has passion and interest in the subject. But also in the commission that I was in, something has happened there. Utata Mnguni gave us chance to introduce ourselves. Zange ndambona ubujeke novalo kangaka. We were joined by a number of officials from the NPA, and yazi lento emothusa kangaka. Nabanye ke abaninzi who took their phone and moved out of the commission. But what I want to appreciate is the guidance that they provided to that commission in terms of clearly articulating the protocols in terms of reporting sexual harassment cases that are prevalent in the department. That commission was exposed to Form 22, and it was my first time portrayed to learn about that Form 22. Akhonto-ke, but the Department of Education also wants to appreciate the presence of all the stakeholders who have been invited in this meeting, which had really made us to know that inclusivity or inclusion of the disability in our plans is very paramount. Thank you for understanding that out of this meeting, your operations and plans will be talking to that standing items. Whether you are in a directorate or chief directorate meeting or a section meeting, you must make sure that it becomes a standing item that must be dealt with. In whatever podium that you take, it must be the item that must be addressed to our communities. This indaba, Mr. Pata, has made it possible for the audience to know that we have got the responsibility of celebrating the achievement and also promoting full inclusion of people with disability. Let alone that we were exposed to a very complicated but very interesting language that I was not even used to. Yafundisa abantu abaninzi ke. We really appreciate that. Our presenters have made it possible, had taught this audience that without inclusion, the education system is incomplete. So we have got a responsibility to go out and run a department that is complete. How often do we talk about it? It's a matter that must be addressed on a daily basis. It is this endeavor that has taught this audience that the theme for 2025 is creating strategic multi-sectoral partnership for disability inclusion society. That has been realized in this endeavor. We really appreciate that. But also, thank you for teaching us that in order for us to do that, it needs teamwork. That is why our presenters continue to talk of the finances that must be injected into the programs that relate to inclusion. The LTSM that must be procured in order that it talks to inclusion as well. We really appreciate that. But also you have taught us that everybody has got a disability here. I'm not referring to you, Mr. Pata, because of your spectacles, but there are a lot of disabilities that we have. And some of them we're not even aware of them. So when we look at those learners and those officials, we must not think that we are safe. We have got our own disabilities. So out of this meeting, we are committing as this audience that the department must be relaxed. We are going to go out and the implementation plan as it was raised here. And these inputs will be consolidated for implementation by all of us here. Lastly, I want to say, iphelile ke namhlanje iindaba. Iindaba has come to an end. So our next step will be our families and our homes. We are not going to go via. Enkosi kakhulu for that. Can we then stand up and take the grace. When we close our eyes and folding our arms, may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit rest and abide with us now forevermore. Amen.
Enkosi Tata uMbangeni. Donqena nje uthethe into othi DG. He is one of those descendants from Zimbabwe. He's my brother, that one. He came from the back of the crocodile. There's the fellow colleagues, Xolo Kancinci, excuse me. I am told that the SLMC and the guests shall go to that one over there. Mr. Schobel, am I right? The SLMC DEXCO members, the guests shall go